6:14. Okay, we're at Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, laws of wearing shoes on Yom Kippur, chapter 14 in Orach Chaim. To apologize to our online viewers that we don't have the text on the screen as we usually do, having little technical difficulties. Okay, so we are at Halacha 6, is that correct? Right? That's what we're holding. And what we discussed, so actually Halacha 5. We didn't do Halacha 5 yet either. And what we did so far is the kind of shoe one's allowed to wear. And we explained on Friday that there are two competing interests here. One is that if it's defined as a shoe, then it is forbidden to wear on Yom Kippur. If it is not a shoe, then you run into the problem of carrying on Yom Kippur. Right? You have all the laws of Shabbos apply to Yom Kippur. And the same way you cannot carry on Yom Shabbos, you cannot carry on Yom Kippur. And just like on Shabbos, this prosthetic leg that is not needed for walking, but just for the sake of appearances, for aesthetics, that's forbidden to wear because it's not needed for your walking, it's not a clothing, it's not a shoe. So that should also be forbidden on Yom Kippur. So again, you run into this problem. If it's not a shoe, and therefore it doesn't fall under the prohibition of not to wear shoes in Yom Kippur, it falls into the prohibition of carrying. And what the Alter Rebbe explained for us is that there's a shoe and then there's an article of clothing. So you can wear clothing on your feet, but you cannot wear a shoe on your feet. And the technical halachic definition of a shoe is if it's made of leather. According to one opinion, also if it's made of wood, then it's also, and it came down to whether it was just the definition of shoe is leather, or as we saw from the Rambam, which the Alter Rebbe quoted, the definition of a shoe is that which prevents you from feeling the hardness of the earth, and that's leather and wood shoes. The end is that although one should be, the Alter Rebbe suggested one should be stringent and stick to not wood or leather, but nonetheless he was lenient. If this was the only option and this is the only way he can walk around the streets without being barefoot, as if he wore this wood shoe, then he can do so. That's essentially what we did on Friday. Did I miss something? I'm sorry?
How could you wear an artificial leg just for looks?
It was apparently a thing. They had crutches. They would have crutches to walk, but they didn't want to have, I guess they were wearing pants and they didn't want it to look hollow, so they just attached this wooden peg. It would seem to me like extra weight to be carrying around, but this was a thing that people did apparently. Anyway, but it all comes down. What we learn from this is that today's prosthetic legs, where people actually use those to walk around, is completely permissible both on Shabbos and even in Yom Kippur, because they're not made of leather. And I don't know if they would be considered shoe anyway. Maybe they would, I don't know. Okay, so now we're on Halacha 5. Chaya, a woman who has given birth. Kol shloshim yom achar lidata, for the 30 days following her birth, muteres, she's permitted linol to wear shoes, leather shoes, whatever it is, even the halachic definition of a shoe, afilu b'yom kippurim, even in Yom Kippur, mipnei shatzina, kashala, because the cold is not good for her and she needs to be well guarded and well protected to keep her health. She's already at risk given the fact that she just gave birth. And likewise, v'chein chayla, the same thing is true of one who is sick, afilu ein b'sakana, even if he's not in danger. Ela shatzina kashalai, only that the cold makes him more uncomfortable and makes him more unhealthy. Then v'chein likewise, mishi yesh la maka beraglav, one who has some sort of bruise or a wound on their foot, mutarim linol, are permitted to wear shoes on Yom Kippur. So this is similar to the issue of washing on Yom Kippur, in that, unlike when it comes to eating, which we'll deal with next, where the laws of when one is allowed to eat are much more strict than just someone who feels a little discomfort and someone's going to be a little weak. But when it comes to washing and wearing shoes and the like, we're more permissive, and therefore this person who's sick, even if there's no danger to the person, and if the person doesn't wear the shoe, nothing's going to happen to the person, but nonetheless the person is sick and the lack of shoe is making this person more discomfort and more sick, I guess, then they're allowed to wear these shoes. Okay, 6. Vav. V'chein im yirdu gashim, if it is raining outside. And he wants to go from shul back to home. Or the reverse, he's going from home back to shul. Adam mafunik, and he is a particular person. Here they translate it as pampered. It's quite the expression. Particular, very feels very discomfort when it gets a little dirty, when it interacts with a particular person. And it causes him great distress when his feet are dirty. The make shamim by coming in contact with the rain. Mutilelino is allowed to wear a shoe. So today this problem almost never happens because we don't wear leather shoes to begin with. But theoretically, if you only had leather shoes, that's all you had, and walking to shul and back would mean either walking in your socks where you get all dirty and wet, and it would cause you, because most of us are in this category. In the old day, sorry?
It's similar to the case of the person who must wash their face in the morning.
That's right. Yes. So I don't know that everybody today is the kind of person which has to have their face washed in the morning. And if not, their whole day they're thrown off. Some people I'm sure like that. But today I would imagine most people would feel very uncomfortable walking to and from shul in socks. And if the only option was to wear the only one pair of shoe that they had, which happened to be leather, then given what the Shulchan Aruch says here, it would be permissible. You wouldn't wear them at home. You wear them when you walk to shul. And as soon as you came to shul, you take them off. And you stay in shul wearing your socks. And then when you go home, put them back on.
Wouldn't that give rise to an appearance that this person is not following the rules?
I suppose, considering people see him walking on the street that way, they know that it's only because of, especially he says it's raining. Maybe maybe it's limited to only when it's raining. And you're walking in the mud and you're getting dirty. If it's dry, then maybe, but it doesn't seem like the issue is raining. It seems like the issue is a question of, we have to look into this further, but it seems like, okay, let's finish the whole halacha here. Okay, at any rate, if he's walking in the rain and he feels discomfort, it causes him distress when his feet are wet from the rain, mutal lino is permitted to wear the shoes, even leather ones. And when he gets home, or the basic knesses, or when he gets to shul, whenever he gets to the destination, whichever one it happens to be, Yechaltzim will take off those shoes. But someone who is not the kind of person who cares, doesn't mind if his feet get wet from the rain, also then it's forbidden to put on the shoes just for the extra level of comfort. So it's a question of, it's a very subjective experience. Do you feel greatly distressed when your socks and feet are all wet? And if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind, then it's forbidden. But im yesham refes v'tit, if the street is full of mud, mutar l'chol adam lino, it's permitted for anybody to wear their shoes. Lefi shakol chashuv mufukan inyan zeh, because everybody's considered particular in this regard. Even if you happen to be the kind of person who doesn't mind it, you are the exception to the rule. Because the rule is that most people do mind their feet walking through mud, then it's become permitted for everybody to wear the shoes to defend themselves, to protect themselves against the mud that's on the street. And puts in the parentheses, others argue, others say this too is subjective. If you're the kind of person who doesn't mind getting your feet muddy, then you shouldn't wear them. And there are the opinion that say that not every person can say, oh, I care. But the practice is that when it comes to muddy streets, people put their shoes on. Right? So again, I don't know like how that would play out today, because it seems to be a subjective experience, right? And today I would say a majority of people would feel very distressed walking, maybe if the streets are completely dry and it's only a question of a little bit of dust on your socks, maybe then people don't mind. But if there's any wetness or dampness on the floor, especially if you have to cross through a park where there's grass, I imagine 90% of the people today would be considered particular and discomforted by wearing that without shoes.
Imagine somebody walking into the shul, walking all the way to the front with muddy feet.
Right. The world was different back then. It's not the... Okay. But he says here, but one should not behave like the masses that do, They walk around the streets with their shoes on, even though it's completely clean, there's no dirt, no mud. And when they come to shul, and they also walk with their shoes in shul. When they come to the spot, to take off their shoes. In other words, if the permissibility is only so that you aren't discomfort when you're walking in the mud, first of all, you have to make sure that it's actually a discomfort to you. If it's not a discomfort to you, then you shouldn't be wearing those shoes. Number one. Number two, once you walk into the building of the shul, you don't have the excuse anymore of the discomfort. So take them off at the door. Don't go sit down in your seat, get comfortable, and then take off your shoes. That's already an abuse of the leniency that we're letting you wear shoes when there's a discomfort in the streets. These people are going in the dark. They're unaware of what's truly the law. And so they're walking in the dark if they don't know anything, because they don't know. But if they do know, and their rabbis tell them, you should take off your shoes before you come into the shul or at the door. And if the streets are clean outside and it's not a big deal, then you shouldn't be wearing them. And they still don't listen, then they are considered voluntarily, or what's the word? Intentionally sinning. Okay. Bottom line is, it's a very subjective experience, and God knows the truth of what's in everybody's heart. And someone who says, "Oh, these things bother me," and doesn't really, Hashem knows. So try to be as honest as you can with yourself. But again, today, considering we have non-leather shoes, it doesn't become much of a problem for most of us, because you can anyways wear the non-leather shoes. Okay, someone who's walking in an area where there's lots of scorpions, or there are other sorts of animals that bite in that area. Permitted for him to wear leather shoes, even though they're leather, even if he's not walking to and from shul, where it's a question of a mitzvah, and that's why he's compelled to go there, so he's putting on the shoes so that he's protected. He's not going, in this case, he's not going for mitzvah. He's taking a stroll during the break between Musaf and Mincha. He wants to take a walk. It's permissible for him to wear shoes, so that he's protected from the scorpion and the like. Which is interesting. What this implies is that the previous halacha, which allowed the person who subjectively doesn't like the mud to wear leather shoes, is only when he's going to and from shul where there's a mitzvah. That's what it seems to imply. Because here, when it comes to protecting against scorpions and snakes, he is clear in stating, even if it's not for a mitzvah. Whereas earlier, when he said the permissibility of wearing shoes because one doesn't enjoy getting wet by the rain, there he said when a person's going to shul and back home. So it seemed like, if I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to walk in the street barefoot, and it's muddy outside, so I have all the leniencies, and I wanted to take a stroll, it would seem like the Alter Rebbe would say, stay home. Don't take your stroll. You're going to shul, okay, so we're going to let you take your subjective permissibility, subjective leniency, and walk with your shoes on because you need to go to shul and go back home. But for a walk, it would seem like the answer is no. And I'm deducing this. You see how I'm deducing this? Because when it comes to the law of the scorpion, he says specifically, even if it's not for a mitzvah. Whereas when it comes to the case of the subjective use of the shoe, and when a person doesn't like the rain, he specifically states he's walking to and from shul. And if the language is precise, then that would mean he shouldn't take a stroll if he doesn't enjoy the mud. Don't say, oh, I don't enjoy mud, I want to take a stroll, put on my leather shoes. Don't do that. That's what it seems like.
Danger to life.
Sorry?
Danger to one's life offers a greater leniency.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In other words, it would seem like the previous case, because it's a subjective experience, it's a question: do you enjoy it? Do you mind it, or are you distressed or not distressed by the fact that your feet are wet or dirty? It's a subjective experience, and therefore, when we're relying on your subjective experience, limit it to when you need to. But when it comes to the scorpions, this is not a subjective experience. It says everybody. A person says, "I don't mind getting bitten." The Shulchan Aruch still says, "Put on your shoe." That's dangerous, right? So because it's not a subjective experience, then it seems like we're more permissive. This is what I can imagine the logic is. But again, we have to look up, to truly understand that, we have to look up all the sources in the footnotes, but this is what it would seem like. Okay, Ches 8. If he's going to shul and home, from home to shul in his shoes. As he mentioned earlier, he shouldn't wear them in the shul. Because once he gets to shul, he doesn't have the excuse anymore. The shul is a clean floor. At least should be. I'm joking. Likewise, you shouldn't put them on in shul, brazenly. Everybody's watching him put on these shoes. Because the dirt that are on his shoes are disgraceful to the shul on such a holy day, which should be honored with all kinds of cleanliness and purity. He should put them into the coat closet in the corner where nobody sees it, or he should send them home with somebody else. If he can, Baruch Hashem, we have a big shul here, so a person can come in with his leather shoes, comes to if that's the only option, and we're raining outside, and he has all the permissibility, so he takes off his leather shoes at the front door, and puts them in the closets. Nobody has to see the dirty shoes hanging around the middle of shul. See, today this is easier, but back in the day where the shul was basically just one room, these laws are much more prevalent in their use. The person walks into shul, he has dirty shoes. What are you going to do? So you got to take them off in the corner, be a little discreet about it, and if you can, send it home with somebody.
Is it more for the reason so that you don't dirty the shul, or more of the appearance of other people seeing this person around?
It seems like it's a question, from the way the Alter Rebbe writes it seems like it's a question of respecting the shul by not bringing dirty shoes in there. Not a question of people seeing. In other words, it seems like he's assuming people know that if the street's dirty, you're wearing leather shoes. You're wearing your shoes. But again, today we have non-leather shoes, so there shouldn't be an excuse at all. Okay, one who is traveling. Even though on Tisha B'Av he's allowed to wear his shoes because he's traveling, but Yom Kippur on Yom Kippur it's asur. It's asur. And this is an interesting line. Because the primary prohibition, or not the primary, the prohibition of wearing shoes on Yom Kippur has its roots in the Torah, even though it's rabbinic, it has roots in the Torah, as we learned in the Gemara. Okay, we have to look up that if I had the computer, I'd look it up. Do you want to look it up? Look up 6:11. 6:11. 17. Okay, therefore they're more strict than on Yom Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av is the whole entire Tisha B'Av is only rabbinic, whereas Yom Kippur is biblical in nature, and even the prohibition of wearing shoes has its roots in the Torah. This is something we learned in the Gemara, right? The Gemara derived from the verses all the various different prohibitions. I know. I don't think he's saying it's deraisa. I think he's saying it's ikr min Torah. That's our thing.
Well, this goes back to your...
Yeah, because when it came to the washing, he said it was rabbinic, right? And here, that's what I'm saying. Look, you see it? What? 6:11:17. You 12? What does it say? Oh, 6:11:2, yes. What does it say? But does he say it's biblical, or he says it has its roots in look in Aleph, look in 1. What does it say in 1? Sorry? And then 11 says? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. He says it's deraisa. Hey, you want to pass it in? Sorry if you don't mind. If you have a look quickly. Yep. He says it's Derabanan. He says it's biblical, but he says the Torah entrusted these things to the sages to delineate when and where they should be done. But he actually says it's biblical.
That's one sheet.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's actually biblical.
It's according to one sheet that others are also about it. The one sheet is rising step in the card, what's included, what's the prohibitions.
Okay, we have to look at this more detailed.
Yes,
Okay.
you go through it.
Anyway, legal of a person who is walking amongst non-Jews and he has fear that they're going to mock him. He's afraid he's going to mock him for not wearing shoes. Even though on Tisha B'Av he's allowed to wear the shoes to avoid being ridiculed. But on Yom Kippur also it's forbidden because again, it is biblical. 11. Last halacha in this chapter. Whenever it's permitted, and the cases mentioned above, for discomfort or for safety, then, and a person is allowed to wear shoes, one should flip the shoes around, put the right shoe on the left foot and the left shoe on the right foot. And the reason is to at least engage in some degree in that which the verse says that one should deny oneself. So even if he can't deny himself completely of shoes, he's still denying himself somewhat within the realm of wearing shoes. Okay, so do we have any loose ends in this halacha before we go to the next section on tomorrow, the next section to eating on Yom Kippur? Are there any loose ends in this set of halachas of wearing shoes on Yom Kippur that we have to cover before we get to eating on Yom Kippur, which we're going to get to, God willing, tomorrow from the Gemara? A person can take a walk on Yom Kippur, sure. You can take a walk on Yom Kippur, yeah. And he says here that if it's a question of danger, you can even wear your shoes, even leather ones. Right? Okay. So I would like to look into more about this question of it being biblical or rabbinic. And Mitzvah Shem will address that a little bit tomorrow morning before we continue on to the laws of eating on Yom Kippur.